If you want healthy and pain-free knees, whether your knees are good to go now or you're dealing with something like arthritis, a meniscus injury, ligament tears, or you've overcome those issues in the past, then there are 5 exercises in this video that you'll need to do. Coach E from Precision Movement here, and today we're going to go through 5 movements to help you keep your knees healthy and pain-free. And before we get to that, I want to just cover a really high-level overview of what your knees need to stay healthy and pain-free. And this will just give you some insight into the thinking that goes behind the exercises and the routine that you're about to learn. So to start off, what do we need to do for the knees? We need to decrease the stress or the amount of force that goes through them. How do we do that? One is we look below at the feet and the ankles. If your feet and your ankles aren't working well, then more force has to go up through the knees because they're not absorbing the forces that they should be. An example here is the intrinsic foot muscles. If they're not working well, they're not going to absorb that force. If you have poor dorsiflexion range of motion of the ankle, you can't pull the toes up very well, then the knees are going to have to absorb more force. The second point here is similar. Your knees are going to be required to do more work if your hips aren't working well. So pain-free knees, for pain-free knees, we got to look below and we got to look above and get those joints working properly. Point number 2 here, decrease tension. So it's very similar, but in this case, we're going to look at the main muscle groups that work at the knee joint, the quadriceps and the hamstrings. When it comes to the quadriceps, the rectus femoris muscle, that's the most superficial muscle of the quadriceps group, it also attaches and works at the hip joint in addition to doing its standard knee extension at the knee joint. This muscle can often get tight, but what people often do is they'll stretch. You'll do your static quad stretch, pull your heel to your butt, but this doesn't address the root cause. The root cause of chronic quadriceps and rec fem tightness is a dysfunctional iliopsoas muscle. If the iliopsoas isn't working well, you don't have good hip flexion, so bring the knee up to the chest. So your brain thinks, what can I do to get hip flexion better, to get it stronger? Well, it'll recruit other muscles, the rec fem being one, but it's not well designed to perform hip flexion, so it easily gets overworked, and when a muscle gets overworked and it never gets rest, it becomes taut and inextensible. So the rec fem and the quads. Same kind of thing happens with the hamstrings. The hamstrings are often taut in people and they feel tight and tense, and the root cause is often glute max weakness. So if we can fix the things that cause quadriceps and hamstring tension and tautness, then that'll decrease the tension of the knees, keep them more loose and relaxed, and they won't wear out as quickly. Finally, general optimal function of the knee joint itself. We need strength of the muscles at the knee joint. So we do need good strength of the quads and hamstrings. We need range of motion, specifically active range of motion. If you don't have good range of motion, you're going to be limited in your movement, and that's going to cause issues. A really big one there is terminal knee extension. If you can't fully extend your knee, then your cartilage is going to wear out prematurely. And finally, we need integration, also known as the way that you move, your movement patterns. For these, we look to the fundamental movement patterns like squats, lunges, hip hinges. Those got to be clean, and you've got to be doing them well for the knees to stay healthy. So here is the high-level overview, and just gives you a little bit of thinking into the approach that went behind designing the exercises for you right now. The first exercise you must master for pain-free knees is the extended knee ankle flex. And this wakes up the often sleepy vastus medialis and the vastus intermedius, which is the deepest muscle of the quadriceps group. It works on range of motion of your ankle joint. So in both dorsiflexion, that is pulling the foot up like this, and plantar flexion, so pointing the toe down. And it helps to do something that we call dissociation, which is dissociating habitual movement patterns, breaking old movement patterns so you can create new ones. So overall, this is a great exercise, And if you've got achy knees, do this exercise afterwards, whether it's from a run or from a sport. Try this technique out for a few reps and you'll find that it might help you out. What you need for this is a foam roller or something to prop your leg up on that's fairly firm. This is about 5 inches approximately. You place the roller just above your knee. I've demonstrated this technique a lot. It's such a good one. And the first thing you do is you activate the vastus medialis. You kind of poke at it a little bit. We've got another video on the VMO specifically. You can watch that. We'll link it up above or in the description. So you poke it, you activate all of the quads, and then from there, keep the activation of the quads going as you fully straighten your knee. And this works terminal knee extension, very, very important. From here, you're holding that terminal knee extension, so full knee extension, and you activate the calves to plantar flex at the ankle, and you keep activating the calves, keep trying to plantar flex more and more as you fire the quads up as hard as you can. Hold that for 5 seconds, and then slowly move to dorsiflexion. So working the tibialis anterior, pulling that foot up as much as you can. Keep activating at the end range. I'm not just hanging out. And here, I'm not just hanging out. I'm squeezing the quad as hard as I can for 5 seconds. Move to neutral ankle and slowly keeping the quads on, lower, soft landing, and then you ramp it down gradually. So gradually let go of the contraction. Don't just let it fall all at once. For this technique, do 2 sets, 3 reps per side, and hold for 5 seconds. Next up, we're gonna work the short ham hip extension technique. And this is kind of the opposite. This is working the knee in full flexion. So we're working that fully extended range. Now we're gonna work that fully flexed range. And this is a new technique I've recently come up with that I did a video on, which you can watch for more in-depth information. But one word of warning is you might start to cramp in the hamstring when you do this exercise. So if you think you might have a tendency to cramp, go watch our other video. We'll link it up above and in the description below. Go watch that video first to learn how to properly prepare the muscle for this technique, or you can just brave it and see what happens. What you need is a yoga block or a rolled up towel or something, and you squeeze it between your legs, and you want it firm enough where you can apply pressure and squeeze. So here I'm squeezing that hamstring, squeezing the block, and my goal is to maintain a good level of tension on the block throughout. Keep the ankle relaxed. I'm setting up in a 4-point stance in good alignment, neutral spine. And from here, I am slowly extending the hip, keeping the pressure on the block. And for the first rep, only go as far as you can. If you feel like you're gonna cramp if you go too far, just go to half range. But if you could fire that glute up nice and strong, keep the hamstring contracted, get it up to full range of motion, hold there for 5 seconds, and then slowly bring it back to a soft landing. And you gradually let it go, like so. And that's 1 rep. So this technique works that fully flexed range of motion of the knee. So we're getting that full active range of motion. We're not just stretching. We're building strength in the end ranges of motion so that you have stability there, the joint can stay healthy there, and your brain sees, okay, this is a range of motion that I can control. So I'm gonna let you keep that range of motion and keep using it. Do 2 sets of 3 reps per side, holding each rep for 5 seconds. And in addition to working that full knee flexion, knee flexed range of motion, by getting the hamstring fully activated and shortened, what you're doing is you're biasing this movement of hip extension and hip flexion to the hip dominant muscles, which are the glute maximus and the iliopsoas. And these are the muscles that we want to be using for hip extension and hip flexion, respectively. So this, in addition to the range of motion at the knee, is also training a good movement pattern at the hip. And by decreasing the forces that go through your knee, by increasing the forces that you absorb with your hip, the knees are going to stay healthier for the long term. The third exercise to master for pain-free knees is the supine tibial rotation. And the knee is primarily a hinge joint, so it goes through flexion and extension, but you can see right here, it also rotates. So we've got internal and external rotation range of motion. If you miss this range of motion,
and the knee is stuck, then that can lead to premature degeneration of the meniscus because you're getting a lot of wear on those passive tissues, especially if you play a sport that requires rotation or hard cutting and you don't have that range of motion. You're going to quickly jam into that joint, and if you go past that active range of motion, you get into the passive tissues like the meniscus, the ACL, the PCL, etc. And those are tissues we don't want to injure because the rehab is slower. So supine tibial rotation restores this important and neglected range. Start off lying on your back. From here, flex the hip to about 90 degrees, and we can start off with external rotation. From here, I'm trying to get deeper into that external rotation. This is a theme throughout all of our exercises. So I'm trying to get deeper into that external rotation range the whole time as I fully straighten out my knee. Keep it externally rotated, and then when I'm fully flexed, I go to internal rotation. And then I fully straighten out. You might have heard that little snap there. Little crepitus, no problem, no pain, no problem. And I'm just going between, cycling between external and internal rotation range of motion, trying to get as deep into those rotations as I can and fully extending and flexing the knee down. So I'm not just letting it hang, but I'm actively pulling my heel toward my butt to get that full knee flexion range of motion. Do, again, 2 sets, 3 reps per side, and that will help you to restore this active range of motion and also integrate the previous 2 techniques, the full knee extension that we got in the extended knee ankle flex and the full knee flexion in the short ham hip extension. So you can see there's a progression here that is an exercise building on the exercises done previously. The 4th exercise is focused on your feet. Like I said before, the feet are the first thing that comes into contact with the ground, and you can absorb a lot of force with your feet if you have good intrinsic foot muscle function and good ankle range of motion. We've worked on ankle range of motion already. Now it's time to focus on the intrinsic foot muscle activation. And the intrinsic foot muscles are the muscles right in the bottom of the feet. There's 44 layers of muscles on your bottom of your feet, and they create what I like to call as the active arch. They can contract and give you an arch without an arch support, without a thick insole. If you use those things, then you might want to think about weaning off of them and simultaneously building up your active arch so that your feet are doing the job that they were designed to do. The exercise that we teach about this to get started with this is the short and skinny foot. We're trying to do 2 things. We're trying to make the foot short, so pulling the forefoot towards the heel, and skinny, pulling right in here, making it skinny across what's called the metatarsals. The metatarsals are the bones right under here, right at the base of your toes. So the first rep you can do, you just think about pulling the foot in and making it skinny and holding for about 10 seconds, squeezing, just trying to activate, holding nice and strong for 10 seconds, and then you let it go. And the second rep you do, you can add one element to it, which I call metatarsal pressure. That is putting a little more weight through those metatarsal bones that I just described to you. So you make a short and skinny foot, you get that active arch, this raises up, this gets skinny, this gets pulled towards the heel, and then I just apply a little weight, put a little bit more of my body weight on this foot, and think of pressing down through the metatarsals. And when you do that, you'll feel an increase in activation of those muscles at the bottom of your feet. Hold it for 10 seconds, keep breathing naturally. And with all of our activation exercises, it's you ramp it up and you ramp it down. Gradually let it go. Don't just let it flop out, but control that intensity from 100% down to 0, from 0 up to 100. We're gaining control over our ability to contract our muscles, not only just to wake them up to contract them at all, but also to control the intensity level at which we can contract them. So the short and skinny foot, you could do 1 set of 3 reps per side, 10 seconds. You can choose to alternate or do all reps on one side, then switch. It's up to you, but do 1 set. And this exercise is going to lead in perfectly to our next exercise, which is the reverse lunge. The reverse lunge is by far my favorite lower body strength building exercise. We get a split stance, so we get that kind of unilateral training or that asymmetrical training that is akin to walking, running, sprinting, anything that we do on our feet. And we get not only strength building on the one side, but we also get lengthening through the quadriceps and the hip flexors on the other side. So it's a very big bang for your buck exercise. And it's also, compared to squats and deadlifts, tends to be easier on your low back. So a great exercise from a cost-benefit analysis as well. What we can do with this now is we can incorporate the short and skinny foot. So I'm going to step back with my right foot. So I'm going to do a short and skinny foot with metatarsal pressure on my left foot. And I'm going to step back, getting a good stretch through here, staying tall and extending through the hip. I'm not bent here. I'm extended through the hip. Front foot is flat. Even pressure between my heel and my forefoot. And I'm pulling myself up mostly with that front foot. Short and skinny foot over here. Little metatarsal pressure. Stepping back. Staying tall. Pulling myself up mostly with this front leg. You see how my back leg lifts off fairly soon. Right about there, I'm lifting it off. And I'm not pushing myself upwards with my back leg. I'm pulling myself up with my front leg. Keep the foot, the thigh pointing in the same direction as the foot, which is straight ahead. Don't let the knee go out or cave in. Staying tall, breathing. Short and skinny foot here, metatarsal pressure there. And that is the reverse lunge exercise. Now, I'm going to recommend for this routine, you do 2 sets, 6 to 10 reps per side. And if you can do 10 reps per side, no problem, that's when it's time to add some weight. Grab some dumbbells, grab a child, grab a barbell on your back, bag of rice. My fellow Asians watching this, grab your 8-kilogram bag of rice and work that thing. So do the reverse lunge, build some strength, and this exercise is going to integrate everything that we've done in the previous 4 exercises. So we've got the foot, we've got the ankle range of motion. So this is dorsiflexion of the ankle. This is great, the knee coming forward over my toes. Look, as long as my foot is flat and I can keep some pressure through my heel, so it's even between my heel and my forefoot, my knee can travel as far forward as possible. And that's a good thing. We're working that range of motion. So we're working range of motion and strength at the knee and at the hips. So great bang for your buck exercise. It integrates everything that we did previously and that we need in life and sport. To summarize the exercises we just went through, we started with the extended knee ankle flex, doing 2 sets of 3 reps per side, holding for 5 seconds. Then we went to the short ham hip extension, again doing 2 sets of 3 reps per side, holding for 5 seconds. Next, we did the supine tibial rotation, doing 2 sets of 3 reps per side. We followed that up with the short and skinny foot with some metatarsal pressure added, doing 1 set of 3 reps per side, holding each rep for 10 seconds. And we finished off with the reverse lunge, do 2 sets of 6 to 10 reps per side, and to add weight, if you can get 10 reps per side, no problem. Do this routine a couple times a week to keep your knees healthy and pain-free. I hope you enjoyed today's video and learned a little bit about what your knees need to be happy and stay pain-free. If you liked this video, we've got some other content for you here and here. And if your knees do bug you, whether you've got arthritis, a meniscus tear, an ACL tear, or just some general achiness that you're not sure what it is, grab our knee pain solution, follow that program, and it'll walk you through exercises like this in the right order in a step-by-step fashion to get you moving freely and without pain. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Peace.